eine Realität aus Blut und Fleisch. Etwa für 4 Monate.
Germany is really the quintessential example of a successful reparations project, if you will. Reparations took place between West Germany and the State of Israel in 1952. And so it was really a state-to-state process, but happened in the context of Germany as a defeated nation, a country that lost the war and was occupied at that point from 1945 onward by the United States, Britain, France, and the USSR. Reparations was not something that the West Germans entered into voluntarily. It was made very clear to them that they needed to do this as part of moving from an enemy state to a state that could begin to repair its reputation and its standing in the world. There were people in the room who were not at all enthusiastic about paying reparations. And part of that was that West Germany as a country was devastated, right? And didn't have a lot of resources. And so was very concerned about its own ability to pay. And the other kind of context is that reparations had been demanded after the First World War and had been so burdensome, overweeningly burdensome to the German nation after the First World War that in some ways laid the groundwork for the rise of the Nazis. Reparations were specifically identified for the victims of the Holocaust, right, for survivors. There was not a lot of focus on the Jewish victims. It was really, for ordinary Germans, a sense that they had been victimized, they had been bombed, their cities had been destroyed. And so there was not a lot of thought about what was owed to the Jewish people in this moment. And then it took another 30 years, really, to begin the process of serious national reckoning for the crimes of the Holocaust. I think it wasn't really until the 1980s became part of West German national identity, right? That acknowledging the Holocaust, reckoning with the sin of the Holocaust became something that the German nation felt committed to doing. The people who were part of the defeated South felt like they too were victims, right? And so the whole kind of lost cause narrative fits in very much to that sense of victimhood. One of the things that makes the debate about reparations that's currently taking place tricky is that there are a lot of people in the United States, people who are whites, who are suffering, right? Who look around and do not feel like they have benefited from the system of inequality, right? And so if they're thinking about reparations for slavery or for Jim Crow or for other forms of really massive structural racial discrimination, they're saying, what about us? Yes, it's true. In Germany, they didn't come to reparations willingly, but they did do it, right? There was a kind of apology or acknowledgement at the national level that was important. In the context of the United States, what we have seen is a country that is unwilling, has been repeatedly unwilling to acknowledge at the national level the sin of slavery, the shifting of kind of overt racial caste system to Jim Crow, which was legally sanctioned segregation, then to more structural but less visible modes of discrimination like redlining, like the war on drugs, like mass incarceration, and things like that. But what we have been able to sort of understand is that racism changes its form and shape. That's something that the Germans don't see as well, that we in the United States do have more kind of grasp of, and yet we have not been able to do the kind of national reckoning. I think you need kind of both. Just getting the national reckoning, just getting the acknowledgement isn't enough. It has to be a kind of continued vigilance in a way of understanding that racism itself is something that has to be continually fought against.